Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today's card is going to use the Lovely Layers Curious Critters, the add-on, the tank add-on Terrarium, the Lovely Layers tank, palm fronds. I also use this 3D embossing folder for the brick wall, but you can't see it because sometimes it just happens that way. So the palm fronds has a cover plate, and then the stencil. I thought I was only going to use the cover plate. I actually ended up using both of them because this is going to be an interactive light up card. Why is this card so extra, you might ask? It is a special request card, so that is why it is so extra. So here I am cutting out the tank and its accessory pieces out of craft. I'm cutting the rocks out of gray, and then the extra leaves and like the little, like the pokey grasses, also out of the same color that I'm doing the palm fronds. And then all of the snakes are going to be out of white because I am going to be coloring them with alcohol markers. I'm coloring all of them with alcohol markers, but those are going to be like the most detailed of them. And I thought it would be really cool. My sister, her grandson, let's talk about this before I go on. So this is why I left this in, even though you can't see it in the final card. The 3D embossing folder for the brick is not wide enough for a landscape card, and I really wanted the brick wall in the background. So they do line up from side to side, but this obviously isn't going to fit through my die cut machine like this, so I just kind of folded it over. This didn't work perfectly because that edge flattened my brick right next to it. So what I ended up doing was just running that whole thing through again without the embossing folder to kind of like flatten down some of them. And that ended up working because my original game plan was tank, leaf background, and then you'd be able to see like the brick wall peeking through. This is not what happened because you got to be adaptable. You got to roll with it. So after I die cut all of my pieces, if you've never seen any of my videos, I do like to go through and sort everything out and make sure that I have all of the pieces, parts that I want for my card, because I don't want to have to go back and die cut after I'm done. And this card is a perfect example of it because after I laid everything out, I realized I needed another one of these branches because I wanted the card to have a lot of different snakes in there. And so here I am going to speed this up because, again, you don't see it in the final card. But I added some pumice stone to the background, and then I also kind of smushed it down on the desk and did some spatters. And this is just to kind of like grunge it up a little bit and give it a little bit of character. But like I said, at the end, you can't see it. But if you needed a brick wall for something like this, if you weren't going to go like with a light up card like I am, you could definitely use that. Then for the ink blending, normally I would do the ink blending beforehand and then cut the cover plate out of it. This is going to be a much easier way to get the color where you want it without having to be oh so gentle about it. But I was kind of rushing, and I did end up being a little gruff with it and losing one leaf, but you can't see in the finished card, so it's okay. But anyway, I'm going to go lightest, light, medium, dark, and then from the darkest color back through the medium and the light. And this is, again, just going to create some visual interest in the background. This is not a focal point. So my sister's husband's son, his children, so her grandkids, he had his birthday party, and I guess they recently went to like I don't think it was a zoo. I think it was more like a county fair type thing. But anyway, they had snakes, and now I guess he's obsessed with them. So she reached out to me and was like, hey, can you make me a snake birthday card for his birthday? And I was like, let me see what I have. I knew I wasn't going to have a lot when it came to snakes because my husband hates them. he's like, everybody has their own irrational fears of things, and I have very high anxiety, so I'm basically afraid of everything, so I don't give him a hard time about it. But the one thing that I'm not afraid of is snakes, but he is. So to each their own, I guess. So here for the wood layer, like the tank trims, I'm just using a couple of different browns, and then you can see I'm really just kind of like grazing the tip of the marker around to add to that look of the wood. But because Honeybee does their lovely layers with so much detail, that wood grain's already embossed in there. And then basically I'm going to do the same thing for these two branches for this kind of wood formation. There's another one too. Please forgive me because I was just like in the go and creating, and so some of it is a little bit off screen or very close to being so please forgive me. So anyway, she was like, will you make me a card? So I was like, yeah, let me see what I have. And I had not used this Curious Critters one yet. Because because when the Petastic release came out, it was like when my mom was sick in the hospital. So I really hadn't used any of the things from that release, but I was like, I think maybe there's something in there. So I started kind of looking at around from like the different companies that I have. And then I sent her the different ones, and she, no shock, picked the Curious Critter snake. And I don't blame her because it is probably the most realistic. So then once I had what I was going to use to make it, then I got to kind of play around with, the idea for what I wanted to do. So first of all, little ones love the interactive elements. So I knew, like with a lot of reptiles, they have to have a heat lamp. And so I was like, that would be really fun if like the card lit up from the top. So I knew I wanted to do a light up card so that he could kind of interact with it. But then on top of that, I wanted it to kind of almost be like a Where's Waldo with the snakes. Like I wanted them to be able to hide among their elements. So that's how I ended up with the card design that I ended up with. So this is, perfect for any of your reptile lovers, whether they're little boys or little girls or big boys or big girls. So here with again, there's that embossed detail that we love in the rocks. To make sure that they look different, I am turning them different ways, and I'm shading the bottom to be the darkest, but I didn't want the rocks to all be the same shape. I mean, they're the same dye, so they are the same shape, but flipping them around and shading them differently will change their shape. And so I was going through, and because we're using the gray paper, this is going to be slightly darker than the gray snake that we are going to color. So he'll be hidden amongst the rocks, but he will be just a little bit lighter than the rocks. Here, in case you're wondering why all of a sudden that marker is much darker, it's because I had to stop and refill it. I have to do the same thing with the C3 here shortly, because I used to be so good about refilling my markers, and now that's just not the case. So yeah, she said his card was a big hit, and I'm super glad that he got to have a good birthday and that he enjoyed his card. I do think even adults, I think, enjoy interactive cards. They're super fun. I originally thought, if you've ever seen any of the videos, my light up videos, before, I always used Pear Blossom Press lights. Really, really like them, and they're easy to use. And they have, it's called the World's Best Foam Tape, which is already like double thickness, which is the same thickness as the lights. So it makes it so much easier to put everything together because you're not having to figure out like the thickness. It's just perfect for it. So here, these are like the little grasses that you can tuck in. So the ones in the back are going to be the darker ones. The ones in the front will be slightly lighter. And then I did go back in and kind of highlight that embossed detail with the darkest colors. For the leaves, I am using a different green combination. This is just to kind of set them apart from the background. Like the little grasses that I'm going to tuck in the bottom, that I don't feel like they need to be super visible. Those are kind of more filler pieces, where these leaves is where my my green snake is going to be hiding amongst them. So I did want them to kind of stand out from the background a little bit. So now here's the snake. So here we're going to get into how we're going to shade this. All of the Lovely Layers dies have a guide. I always bring them up. But I'm going to tell you, I was like, okay, I'm good. Like I can see how all the pieces lay out, and I didn't open the guide. And I'm just going to let you know that I'm putting it together upside down. 110%. I'm not putting it together the right way. So this one is the gray. Like I said, I'm using the same colors that I used for the rocks, but because the rocks are cut out of that gray cardstock, it does make them a slightly different color. This one, I do like to Google and see like their different colorings. And so this one is colored kind of like a ball python, which is, I guess, a really popular type of snake to be a pet. So I went in with the darker ones for his spots, and I wanted to do that right away because alcohol markers are transparent. So when you lay a lighter color over a darker color, it does lighten up that color a little bit. And obviously when you have like the snake, his scales, they're all blended together. Like that's the pattern, kind of like when you have a brindle coat dog, like my Molly is brindle. And so when it grows in, it doesn't grow in haphazardly. Like that is the pattern of her hair, the way that it grows. And so I wanted the darker spots to be in there like you would normally see, but I wanted them to also be blended. So once I have them all colored up, I'm going to put them together, and then that way I can make any last minute adjustments for the shadows. Real talk, don't do this. Just lay them on top of each other to double check, because what I found was I ended up kind of having to tear them apart a little bit to get them to flow into my scene. So wait to glue all the pieces parts together. So these, like here, this is, I'm trying to put it together upside down. And then here where you see me pause is where I actually bring up the layering guide and then flip it around, and ta-da, we have a snake. But I am going to switch that up with the next snake. I colored it the same way, and I used warm grays. I didn't use browns because I did want him to stand out from all of the brown things. Like here you can see like they're gray, like what we've been talking about. So this one I wanted to do a warm gray so it would kind of blend in a little bit with the wood, but not so much so that he wouldn't be able to find them. You know what I'm saying? Like I want him to be a little bit hidden, but I want him to be able to find them. And then for this one, because I don't want 3 of the same snake, for this one I am intentionally turning it upside down and changing the placement of the head. So this is going to give me a different look for the snake. And because snakes wrap and coil on themselves or other items, it's not going to be something that, like maybe with another animal where if you turned them upside down and adhered their head, it would look a little wild. This one isn't really like that, and it lends itself to that versatility, which I am a big fan of. So I did kind of speed this up a little bit because the coloring is the same as, you know, as the one that we just did. It's just going to be I was going to say the adhesion, but that sounds weird, doesn't it? The putting together, no, I guess it is adhering it all together. It sounds crazy though. But anyway, it's going to be all of that is just going to be a little bit different, as well as the shading underneath the head onto the body, because we're changing which direction that is looking. So yeah, this is a little bit of a different card for me, but like we were just talking in, one of the recent lives, where we said, yeah, I had asked, like, does anybody take requests for their cards? And some people were like, no, I have limited craft time. I just want to make what I want to make. And I totally get that. I absolutely get that. That's one of the reasons why I don't really work. I'm not on any design teams, is because, like, I want to make what I want to make. I don't want to have to use product that maybe doesn't suit me. It just feels very disingenuous to me. And so I only work for companies that let me make what I want to make. Because I feel like when you really love something, like, that's when it's going to shine. So here they would be exactly the same if we, put them together the same. But in this one, I'm going to flip it upside down and then glue that head just in a slightly different spot. So we have two snakes out of the same die, but they look a little bit different. So yeah. I like those. And then the other way that we're going to switch it up, so we have the gray for the rocks, the warm gray for the stone. And then for this one, I'm going to adhere it the way that it's supposed to go together, but I'm going to change the pattern on the snake. And yes, I did look all of these up. I have no idea what they look like in real life. So for this one, I'm doing more of I just Googled green snake is pretty much what I did. And then the one that came up quite a bit had kind of like a striped pattern. So I'm ignoring those embossed areas and I'm just going in and creating my own stripe along it. This is, what did they call these? I wonder if I can look back and see. A spotted bush snake, I think is what it's called. But anyway, all of their bellies are always a little bit lighter. And so because of that, that's why you see me always making the underneath of their face the lightest color. But anyway, so I just wanted to show you that you don't have to go with the embossed area. If you don't want to, you can switch it up. So, what were we talking about? Oh, we were talking about the live. So, I had asked, what do you guys like doing? And then some of you were like, yeah, I really like when people, ask me to make specific things. I do enjoy when people ask me to make specific things because, as most people, I think would understand, because not a lot of people do this craft or understand this craft or appreciate it. So when somebody goes out of their way to ask you, like, hey, could you make this card specifically for me? It brings me a lot of joy, because it's like they recognize that there is something different about the cards that we make than the cards that you can just go pick up at, the drugstore. Because they're not the same. They're not the same. Like, could she have gone and, found a snake card at the drugstore? Absolutely. Would it have been this involved? Probably not. Plus I get the joy of, making it. So here, as I'm putting everything together, I'm going to trim that palm front. I want it to be in the background, so I'm going to glue my tank frame to it. And then I am going to trim it out, because I knew, I looked at a lot of different photos and it seemed like the ones that were really, they were super into their pet snakes had a lot of, things in the tank in the background. I have not owned I've never even owned a terrarium. I've owned an aquarium, if you guys remember the fish stories from way back when. But even that, I think, is buried in our basement. But anyway, so I'm just going to go around the edge of the die and just trim off the excess. I'm not worried about the palm fronds falling apart, because I've made sure that the perimeter is super secure. So now, once I have that, this is where I realized I should not have glued them. Every single one of these snakes I pulled apart, guys. Do as I say, not as I do. Like every single one of them I pulled apart so that I could make them more interactive with the scene. So like here we have these two branches meeting, and I wanted to do the green snake like hiding in the leaves. This one, the gray one, I did it so that it was kind of like coming out from behind that larger rock. And this also helps because they're adhered the same way, but adhering them on a different angle helps it to look different. And then with the gray one, I took it apart so I could put it within the wood. Now, when I was looking at everything, this is where I was like, this one light is not going to be sufficient. I knew I was going to have to add the vellum to diffuse the light, which that is what makes my brick background null and void. But the one light wasn't as much light as I wanted. So I switched to an easy light. An easy light, they come in a 2-pack, but they have 3 separate lights. But they also have those wires that you need to hide. So I have a whole open background and I need to hide these wires. So that's where I brought in the stencil. Like sometimes you just gotta, this card did take me a long time. I'm not going to pretend like it didn't, but it was worth it, I think, in the end. So in order to do the stencil on vellum, here's what I found. I have the best luck using Distress Oxides, not Distress Inks, because the pigment properties, for some reason, work better on the vellum, and you really have to work it in. So I'm using finger daubers. These ones are from scrapbook.com, but whatever you have, I think the last time I used pouncers, but those aren't a thing anymore. I think they're magic mushrooms from another company, but I don't know what the name is. But anyway, you really want to work it in there. So you want to continually pop all over it until it's not shiny anymore. That way, when you're done, you can do what I've just done here, and it will not smear any of the ink. It will be dry, but you have to pounce it in with those daubers until it is dry. No more shine. So now I have all of my elements and I know where they're going to go. So I'm going to glue my snakes in place just by adding that adhesive. Nobody's going to know I tore them apart because they're put back together. They're just put back together with something else in between them. And so I'm going to start building out my scene. So we have the kind of the warm gray one to that left side, the cool gray one to the right side, and then the green one will hang down amongst that kind of foliage as well as the palm frond background. I do recognize that the snake on the right, his tail is hanging over, and then some of these branches will also hang over, but I'm just going to trim them out. Additionally, you could put a layer of like acetate so that you have like that glass reflection. But I already had a lot going on in here. So I wasn't really going to, I didn't really want to risk it. But yeah, I do like getting kind of the, the custom requests. It makes you feel like they really appreciate your craft. And so my oldest sister, because she does have a tendency to send more cards, she's always like, do you have a sympathy card? Do you have this card? Do you have that card? And honestly, I'm so happy to give them to her because, I'm not mailing nothing. So I laid everything out so that it was like kind of dry fitted. And now I'm going to start adhering some of the elements together. So like here I put the glue onto the branches and then I picked up the additional branches. Same thing with these other pieces. The snake is glued. So I'm going to just pull out the elements that I need to and then glue them back down. At this point, I don't think the vellum is adhered at this point. I can't not remember. Did I leave that? No, see, it's not. Okay, I knew what I was talking about. But I am going to go in with these are my little spellbinders, scissors, and I'm going to trim that off as well as the branches that are hanging off in the top left. And then I'm going to add glue, especially to the outside perimeter. And then if you wanted to add some in between, like on the palm fronds, that would also be fine. Just make sure you're not adding a ton because you don't want your glue seeping out onto that vellum. So now that that's done, I will then trim off this excess around the tank. This tank fills the full like A2 size card. So I had to do it landscape because it, that's how it fills it up. And then here, this is actually, this set is from Pear Blossom Press. They carry a bunch of different ones from different companies that are the interactive ones. This one is the Press, Stamp, and Die bundle. And it has all of the, like instructions, like press here or push, pull, those kinds of things. And there are other ones that are out there. So I just did that onto the same craft cardstock and then colored it the same so that it would fit in with that wood grain. For my card base, I have cut it into a 8.5 by 5.5 inch piece. I scored it at 4 1/4 and then used my bone folder to fold that over. That is going to be my card base. Here, I'm holding it in place so that I can get the button that turns on the light to line up with my actual button on the front that says press here. So once I have that there, I'm adhering that with some Scotch tape, and you'll see me like consistently checking this just to make sure everything's still working. And then once I have that there, I'm going to stretch out my wires so that I have a light in the top left-hand corner, in the middle, and in the top right-hand corner. So that way, when we press the button, there is lights coming down all the way across the top, which is, I think, how you would usually see it. It might be a bar light instead of 3 individual lights, but you get what I'm saying. And then once I have all of those in place and I'm happy with how that's looking, then I will use the Scotch tape to further tape down the wires to make sure that those aren't going to go anywhere. And this right here is why we needed that vellum piece to have a pattern. Otherwise, you would just be able to see through to that wood or to that brick wall, and you'd be able to see all the wires, which kind of ruins the illusion, right? So I could have just skipped putting this on, but I figured I put in the work, so I'm going to do it because, somebody might look at it from the side and see a quarter of a corner, and that'll look like a brick wall. And that'll look like a brick wall. When I am adhering my backgrounds to my card bases, I do make sure to line them up first with the folded edge. And the reason I do that is because then if there is anything hanging over the edge of the card, like where it ends, that I can trim it off. If I line it up with the bottom of the card, I can't trim the fold. And then here, this is that tape I was telling you about. It's already double thick, so it is the same thickness as the light. I put that all the way around the perimeter, and then that way it will give me enough room to hold my light and to securely adhere it to the card. Again, because we have that vellum that we've, stenciled on, you're not going to see any of that foam tape, even though it is wider than the frame, especially on the left and right hand sides. So everything is good there. Now we're going to start adding our details. Of course, I'm going to add a little bit of shimmer and glitter to our snakes. I want to make sure they're easy to spot. And then I also added some highlights to the snakes as well as to, some of the wood and things like that, the other elements to make them kind of pop off a little bit. And then here, this is with just my computer monitor on, and you can see, and then this is full dark, like it lights it up from the back. Obviously, if you're looking at it in a dark room, you know, you would still see the elements, but I wanted to show you both ways anyway. I heat embossed the Sentiment Happy Birthday. This is from the You're So Extra birthday set. I heat embossed it on that same green that we've been using throughout, that green cardstock. It was a little bit too light, so I did add some shading with the Mowed Lawn. And then I'm going to stamp inside. This is from that same set, the You're So Extra, but it coordinates with how we're, you know, the card. And it says, may you always shine brightly. And so like we have the shining light, you know, they work together, you know what I'm saying. And so I'm going to put this into my Misty and then stamp this down. Typically I stamp them first before I adhere everything to the card, just because I get nervous that I might make a boo-boo, but this time I threw caution to the wind and it ended up being okay. So this is the whole card. I hope that this inspires you guys to make maybe a light up card, or, you know, to try some of these techniques that we've used here to create interest. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I always appreciate your time, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.